Following the release of former Nickelodeon star Jeanette McCurdy's memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, Dan Schneider, who is responsible for iCarly and many other channel hits, is under scrutiny. This as former Nickelodeon stars and employees speak out about his alleged behavior. In a new report from Insider, people who worked with Schneider described allegations of sexism, misconduct, on-set bullying, and sexualizing underage stars in disturbing age-inappropriate scenes.
Though McCurdy did not directly name Schneider in her book, many assume that he was the man referred to as the creator, whom the writer said pressured her into drinking alcohol when she was underage and of giving her an unwanted shoulder massage, Insider writes. Senior correspondent at Insider, Kate Taylor, joins us now to discuss. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you guys for having me.
Okay, so for those of us who are a little bit elder in the elder millennial category, help us understand the background and the relevance of Dan Schneider in this media space.
So Dan Schneider was really one of the most prolific people in kids TV for a while. We have iCarly, we have Victorious, we have Drake and Josh. Even earlier, his first hit was The Amanda Show, which was kind of Amanda Bynes' real star vehicle. So he really was a huge moneymaker for Nickelodeon for years and years and years. So for people who kind of became stars off of his show, for there to be pushback now, especially from someone like Jeanette McCurdy, is really, really kind of interesting and disturbing to hear what was actually going on behind the scenes.
Right, so I've been hearing rumors about this individual, Dan Schneider, for a couple years now. There have been reported pieces, making note of various accusations of sexual misconduct or harassment, or sexualizing underage people or adding sexual content to the programming. Now, my understanding is he's not at Nickelodeon anymore. Is that the case?
No. So in 2018, Nickelodeon cut ties with Schneider. At the time, it was presented as a mutual decision. New York Times reported last year basically that this was following an investigation that did not find evidence of sexual misconduct, but that did find evidence of verbal abuse. Schneider basically verbally abusing his colleagues.
Okay, so why do you think this is coming out now? Because we have had obviously a pretty significant Me Too cycle over the last 5 or 6 years or so. It's hard to keep track at this point. And, this kind of discussion around child stars has been pretty hot. I mean, we've seen the whole saga of Britney Spears, kind of culminating in this, her finally getting free from her conservatorship and becoming her own woman on Instagram. There was obviously a whole saga about her younger sister as well, who was one of these big child stars, did become pregnant very young, and that was its whole media cycle in and of itself. And it is curious, why do you think that it's only now that people are taking a closer look at this guy, even though, to Robby's point, rumors have percolated for some time?
I think that there's a few different things. I think, first of all, for a long time, Dan Schneider had so much power in the industry that people were not really motivated or were scared to kind of speak out about their experiences. I also spoke with a lot of people who said he was kind of really, really a horrible boss in certain ways, but because they didn't have any kind of personal knowledge of a settlement or anything that was kind of a smoking gun, they felt, what's the point of kind of discussing this when this person has so much power and I don't necessarily have evidence of a clear-cut case of wrongdoing. And then I think also right now we're in a moment, as you said with Britney Spears, where we're looking back at things that were maybe seen as acceptable at the time, such as having a creator who is going to scream at people and berate people. At the time, that was more normalized, or scenes that were somewhat sexual. As many, many sources told me, basically, pretty much everything that we saw in Dan Schneider shows were signed off by Nickelodeon, the network, parents on set. So a lot of things that were kind of seen as okay and normal then, maybe people who were uncomfortable didn't have the opportunity to voice their opinion now. And I think also some viewers are looking back at things that they felt okay with at the time that now feel a bit gross.
Yeah, I think that's all very good points. I mean, I remember some of this program. I guess most of it was just a little after my time. Maybe I caught some of those shows like when I was babysitting. I do remember the Amanda Show. I remember quite liking the Amanda Show, and it did have a weirdness and like a very offbeat humor. So I got to be a little careful. Like, obviously, if he was abusing his staff, that's never appropriate. I guess it was resulting in like arguably good television or interesting or different television. And if people at the time were kind of going along with it, it's hard to not be a little just revisionist about like, oh yeah, that was inappropriate, but everyone was fine with it at the time, and it produced really good television. And now we're going to like condemn it, but that was probably true of so many workplaces. I don't know what you do with that.
Something a lot of people brought up is that working for Dan, it would be half the time if you were in his favor. It was really exciting and fun, and you were kind of writing these things that felt really cool and really funny, honestly. And then if you were not on his good side, you just kind of, one writer told me, if you were not on his good side, he would burn you to the ground. So I think that it was hard because there was this double-edged sword where if things were working out, this is an amazing, stable job to have. And like for the child stars, this could be their ticket to becoming A-list celebrity. Someone like Ariana Grande got her start on a Dan Schneider show. But then on the other hand, if you're not on Dan's good side, you could be just like excluded from opportunities, or in the cases of some writers I spoke with, 2 female writers kind of said that they were being pressured into giving him massages, into kind of having this very hostile workplace under his control.
Yeah, I do think that's a really important point about how things our cultural expectations of what's appropriate have in fact changed kind of rapidly, and that sometimes there is a revisionist history that wants to make individuals more singular and exceptional than they were actually at the time. And there's a certain way that all of us are implicated in the kinds of things that we consumed and the kinds of content that we liked. There was, recently a discourse about certain kind of coverage that used to be done at TYT that participated in some of that Perez Hilton style, making fun of disproportionately female celebrities, upshot skirt photos, drawing disparaging cartoon lines on people's faces and things like that. And a lot of people watched, read those blogs and consumed that kind of content, and were in that part of we watch the TMZ shows, and it does feel like sometimes there's an offshoring of responsibility for a cultural moment that many of us participated in onto these individuals. And I saw once a definition of kind of wokeness and what is actually the problem with wokeness that pointed to the idea that the real problem isn't that things change, but there's an expectation that we should all have known better already, and that's what gets people upset.
But in some ways, this the sexualizing of young people has gotten more permissible on television. I think of like Euphoria, which is supposedly depicts high schoolers that are wearing just like unbelievably revealing clothes and are engaged in frankly depicted sex and drugs, etc. And you have heard anecdotal. There's been some reporting, I think, about even behind the scenes conflicts between the talent and the producers or whatever the creative team is behind the show. So these seem like very treacherous waters to try to having a show about kids, working with kids, and having like very adult themes. And
this seems like, I think it's
yeah.
noteworthy that this was kind of taking place in this tween TV boom. It was when Disney was kind of really ramping up its live action. It was Nickelodeon was ramping things up. So there was this big competition between Disney and Nickelodeon for who can kind of win over those like children to like tween-age years. So that's when you have High School Musical. You have all these shows where it's like, oh, the stars are expected to star in the show, but also have an album and also kind of sing and just dominate these audiences.
And Zendaya was part of that too.
Money writing on these decisions,
right.
And
that's where Zendaya came from. Yeah,
kind of win over children.
Yeah. Oh, very interesting. Well, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this.
Thank you.
More Rising in just a minute.